Good morning.
Morning.
I call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it is, what is today? Today is May 20th. So welcome, everybody. Can we establish a quorum?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Ms. Kirkner?
Here.
Mr. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Huff?
Here.
Mr. Robertson? Mr. Soyson?
Here.
Mr. Lester?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Gordon? Secretary Daly?
Here.
Madam Chair, please let the record reflect that we have 6 members are present and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we stand for pledge? Are there any changes to the agenda? No?
I don't have them.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve today's agenda, planning and zoning agenda for May 2025.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Stands approved. Next is the approval of the minutes for April 2nd and April 15th. Have you all reviewed them?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll motion that we, can we do both at the same time?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the meetings of April 2nd, 2025 and April 15th, 2025.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Commission member reports. I have none today. No ex officio member. And anybody else have a comment? No. Okay. Moving on, number 7, administrative matters. Secretary Daly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have just a couple of quick updates on things. I wanted to let you know that the Board of County Commissioners did sign the transportation priority letter that we had shared with you back in April, I think. And that has gone out to the state. And also, just one little FYI, master plan related. We are continuing to try to find different ways to connect with various groups who are maybe not the typical people who will come to open houses or other types of meetings. So one of those groups are teens and young adults. We want to be able to hear what some of their hopes and challenges are. So at the end of April, we connected with folks at the Boys and Girls Club here in Westminster and established a good connection with that whole organization. So we had fun time with the group that was out for their teen night, got some good feedback on the kinds of things that that are big issues for them. We're continuing to look for ways to reach out to different teens and young adults. So we will be working with the Carroll County Public Schools Student Government Association at the end of this month. We have a few other groups that we're in contact with or will be reaching out to just continue that dialogue with our young people to make sure that the recommendations that are coming out of this master plan are also reflective of the next generation and how we can kind of meet some of their needs both now and what we would anticipate for the future. So just wanted to let you know that that's in the works, and as soon as we have a good body of feedback, we'll share that with you all.
Great, thank you. Extensions?
Yes, I have 2. Good morning.
Good morning.
Laura Matthias with Bureau of Development Review, and we do have 2 extensions since we last met that were granted. The first one is a subdivision. It's called Fern Hill. The file number is P02053. This is a 17-lot subdivision, and it's their 14th extension for this project. It's in Commissioner District 2. The second one is a site plan, Carroll Station Professional Office Park. The file number is S150014. And this plan, the property, they decided to pursue a different plan on the site, and that is the Primrose Child Care Facility, which you are familiar with because that's a recent development. Primrose is almost across the finish line, and once it is, this older plan on the same property will be voided. But they extended because we're not quite there yet. So those are the 2 extensions. That's in Commissioner District 5, and it's the 5th extension that they filed for on that. Thank you.
Thank you. BZA cases.
Good morning, Carlisle Follett with Comprehensive Planning. I have 2 BZA cases. Case 6556 is a request for an expansion of a non-conforming use. The property owner is seeking approval for 14 parking spaces that were not part of the original site plan, but are currently on the property. The lot is 3.12 acres and is located at 3459 Shiloh Road in the county's agricultural zone. Planning staff finds this request for a non-conforming use is consistent with the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. And case 6558 is a request for an expansion of non-conforming use for the modification of 2 non-conforming existing lots through the reconfiguration of a common boundary line to accommodate 2 existing non-conforming dwellings. The size of lots 20 and 21 are 4,890 square feet and 4,890 square feet respectively, and they are located at 118 City View Avenue in the county's residential 10,000 zone. Planning staff finds this request for an expansion of non-conforming use is consistent with the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No?
I just want to jump in really quickly.
Okay.
I realized that I misspoke. I don't think we had shared the priority letter with you ahead of time, so we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. That's something that the Board of County Commissioners does every year, but we'll make sure you get a copy of that. So, sorry I misspoke.
Yeah, as you said it, I thought, I don't think so, but.
I think I was mixing it up with the CIP. So, yeah, we'll make sure you get a copy of that just for your reference.
Okay, great, thank you. Number 8, special report, Piney Ridge Parkway, age-restricted villas.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Let's get this PowerPoint open. I'm Kirsten Marple with the Bureau of Development Review. I'm the project coordinator for the Piney Ridge Parkway Age-Restricted Villas Project, which we have before you today for a special report. While I get myself situated, if you gentlemen can introduce yourselves too, please.
Jeff Sonero with CMS Associates, civil engineer for the project.
Mike Kalanock, JPB Partners, owner of the land.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are before you today with a special report for this project. This will look a little bit familiar. We met with you last year in July for a developer's presentation of this project. where the developer brought it to the table for discussion and input, but no action was required and no action was taken. So this site's located in Eldersburg, in the central south area of the county. This is on the south side of 26, west of 32. That's these main roads you can see here and here, off of Johnsville Road, which runs this way, and Piney Ridge Parkway. Freedom Avenue also is of note, and it runs this way, terminating at the end of the property here. As you can see on this map, this area is mostly zoned residential. That's all the yellow and orange. There are some areas of commercial zoning, including a portion of the site we're looking at, but the other portion of the site is also zoned residential, and that is R10, residential 10,000 square foot zoning is this middle orange tone here. Okay. Most of the area is already developed with housing. There are a few churches in the area as well. And the site we're looking at is currently vacant and adjacent to single-family homes here, multifamily apartment buildings here, and also in this location over this way there are townhouses. We're before you today looking at this site for the consideration of the site layout and density and exterior design, site layout, density, and exterior design for an age-restricted community prior to the proposal going to the Board of Zoning Appeals for approval of the use. This is a special section of our code that basically is only applicable to this specific type of project. This is a retirement village is what it's called, and this process goes to the Planning Commission first for approval and consideration, determination is a term it uses, determination of density, exterior design, and site layout before proceeding to the Board of Zoning Appeals. You'll hear more details about it later, but essentially it kind of locks in the plan that we're looking at as far as the number of units and what the layout looks like prior to going to Board of Zoning Appeals, and it should look the same coming back to you. So this is the site layout here. Altogether, it's about 6.5 acres. It's 2 parcels. You can see more clearly on this here, this black line that runs through them. It's currently 2 parcels. As a part of this process, the parcels will be merged together prior to final approval. So we're reviewing the site as one comprehensive piece of land. And we've shifted the way this looks now, but this is the northern point of the property here. Piney Ridge Parkway runs along its eastern side, Johnsville Road along the south, and then Freedom Avenue comes up along the western side, which terminates in a cul-de-sac, which is proposed to remain as is. Access to the site is primarily through Piney Ridge Parkway for most of the construction that you would see, the new access road, and about half of the houses, a little over half of the houses. We're looking at a total of, how many? We're looking at, excuse me. $31. So a little over half of the houses off of Piney Ridge Parkway and a driveway off of Piney Ridge Parkway, which will be a private drive just serving those houses. And then the additional 14 houses would be accessed off of Freedom Avenue here as well. No access is proposed from Johnsville Road. So this use, this retirement village use, allows for townhouses. These are townhouse style or semi-attached houses. And the properties, we'll get to the elevations later, so I'm hopping around a little bit. But the retirement village, as I mentioned, it has to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals for this property because a portion of the property is zoned residential 10,000, which requires to go through Board of Zoning Appeals. When the properties are consolidated, the zoning doesn't change. So a portion of it's still going to be C1 zone, that's not going to change. But because a portion of the site being developed is in the residential, it has to go through Board of Zoning Appeals. The zoning code regarding retirement villages in particular states too that the bulk regulations are based on the determination of the Planning Commission. There are no base bulk regulations for a retirement village of this style in this zoning district. Basically, whatever you approve here is what would remain applicable, as far as, that's to say, how far the buildings are from the property lines, essentially here. This is, again, one property. You'll see lot lines in there for each of essentially the backyards and the front yards of these dwellings. That is not actually a subdivision lot, so the setbacks would be based off of the outline of the property in full. The lines that you're seeing here are condominium lots, which is not something that the county regulates, but it's something that developer is able to do through the state and through the plating process. So these lots are not actually subdivision lots. The setbacks are not going to be based off of those. The setbacks are based off of the outline of the full property. I will note, however, that the current proposed setbacks here meet the standard required setbacks for a single-family home in this zoning district, which is noted here is 35 feet from the front, 12 feet from the sides, and 50 feet from the rear. So these buildings meet those requirements based on the outline of the property, which is this full site that we're seeing here. As far as the access goes again, and the roads, we do review these. Engineering review looks at the plans, and the roads department looks at the plans, and they had to provide information regarding the number of trips coming and going from the site that would be applicable based on regulations that are outlined clearly in guidebooks that are not, they're not just made up numbers, right? So there's certain regulations they go through and information that they use to calculate how many trips would be generated by this particular type of use and this particular density. Those numbers did not require a traffic study for this project that were provided to the county, so no traffic study was required or conducted. There's a range of those numbers that if you are at a threshold of, I believe, 25 to 50 trips, peak generation trips, and I had a printout, but I'm not sure where it went, so I'm going to try and make it up here from what I remember. If you're between 25 and 50 trips, you have the county would have the option to require a traffic impact study. If you're 50 trips or above, you have to do an impact study. This project was less than 20 trips, so it didn't meet the threshold of even being able to be considered for requiring a traffic impact study. I believe it was 18 was the maximum. Yeah. The maximum peak trips was in the afternoon, a total of 18. So I wanted to touch on that specifically because the section of code that we're talking about regarding this pre-Board of Zoning Appeals process specifically calls out traffic impact study, but none was required here. It didn't meet the threshold for us to even recommend it. And again, engineering and the roads department are reviewing this project as it moves through the process, and they're addressing any comments as applicable here. Along the roads, they're proposing sidewalk. So sidewalk actually starts here on the south side of their private driveway entrance as far as the public right-of-way goes. And it continues all the way down through here, across, or along Johnsville, and up to Freedom Avenue to connect with the existing sidewalk that currently terminates in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Private sidewalk is also included inside of their private driveway, connecting all the way back to this last house here on this side of the road, or the private road. Sidewalk was not recommended to continue to the north. There is sidewalk on the other side of the street here, but it doesn't continue this way, and the right-of-way and with the stuff that's in the right-of-way there doesn't really facilitate the sidewalk continuing in that direction. But again, there is existing sidewalk all the way along the northern frontage of this road here that this will tie into in this location here. Parking was considered for this project. Parking requirements for this style of townhouses would be 2 per each house. Each property here has a 2-car garage and a 2-car parking area within their own driveway. So each house was allotted with 4 parking spaces instead of 2. They have 124 parking spaces provided in a site that would have required only 62. And again, that's all within the driveways and within the garages of this site. This is a page that shows essentially forest conservation. There's some wooded area here, this dark gray area. You'll see a portion of that's being, a fair portion of that's being removed. But the area, the northern corner, is being maintained as a forest conservation area. Landscaping will also be provided as the site moves through the review process. I don't think we have those plans yet. We do have lighting plans, and I know it's probably hard to see, but let me describe to you what you're seeing here. So each house will have a 6-foot tall light post. That's what these circles here are that are in front of the houses. That will be next to their driveway, so each house will have that. And I don't believe any other site lighting is provided for this location. And I'm not sure what the regulations would be in the future for, since they're condominium lots, installing lights onto the house otherwise. And that's a future thing. But as far as site lighting goes, it's single light fixtures for each house. And the elevations for the houses, I think you have 3 primary styles with 3 visual siding configurations each, right? I know this is probably a little hard to see, but you'll have a first floor brick on just the bottom portion of the first floor, and then full siding, right? Essentially is what we're seeing here, with some shake shingles along the dormers, and a few configurations for the dormers here. And these will all be 3-bedroom units, with the exception of those who choose to be 4. You can see the difference in the bottom right here, comparing a 3-bedroom unit to a 4-bedroom unit. What I wasn't too sure about is if the windows shown here on the side units, is that all the side units, or is that optional? I guess that would be the builder. Yeah. But there are windows on some of the side units shown here. Okay. So when we were looking at the drawings, this is Piney Ridge Parkway. This is on the bottom side of the driveway, or the eastern side of the site. This is where the entrance to the private driveway is going to be, directly adjacent to the entrance to this apartment complex here. You'll see that some of the wooded area that would be clear, but again, the area closer to us in the camera would be further up, maintained as a forest conservation area. This is a little bit down the road. This is on Piney Ridge Parkway still. The entrance we were just looking at, it's right about here, looking onto the site. So the drive would come in this way and serve the houses through here. This is Johnsville Road. No access is proposed or provided here, but there will be sidewalk along Johnsville Road, a public sidewalk. This is the other end of Johnsville Road where it meets Freedom Avenue. Again, the sidewalk continues around through here with a crossing area. And then Freedom Avenue. So this is where the 14 townhouses on Freedom Avenue would have their entrances. This drive here, this public road, county-maintained road, will be widened to meet the current standards, and then the driveways will be added on. I will note that the widening essentially, I mean, you can see where it's gravel existing, where existing residents park their vehicles. It basically widens it out to that point, maybe a little bit beyond that point. So it's not going to be doubling the size of this road or anything. And this is an overlay this is an overlay showing the plans that you saw last June. So this is not this current plan. This is a little bit different, but you can see the differences are pretty minor. Again, last June, that was just informational. There was no actions taken. There was no decisions made at that time. Today is the time where you'll be making a determination regarding the layout and the density. But I just wanted to bring this into the discussion as it was previously reviewed during that meeting. I think mostly the configuration of the stormwater and the sidewalk has changed since that last meeting. So again, we're here before you today for determination on the density of the number of units, the exterior design, and the site layout. And then following your determinations, they will be able to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and essentially the plan should come back to you looking more or less the same as far as density, layout, and the site appearance goes. So I'm going to bring it back to the overall layout sheet. I'm happy to go back to any pages anybody would like to see more information about, but I appreciate if you have any questions or discussion to come to that point.
Will there be parking along the street on Freedom Avenue, on that side of the street, as people already park there now, when it's widened out? Right,
so there's no parking signs proposed, and there are no parking signs required. This concerns have been a discussion since the first time this plan came before the commission, which I didn't want to get too much into the details of the history, but this project, I think as we discussed in our last meeting, was originally proposed to be a apartment complex on this parcel. I think a 3-building, 54-unit apartment complex, and then I believe 10 townhouses on this parcel. So those concerns, the parking concerns in particular, in regard to when there was the 54 apartment unit complex with just barely enough parking, I think literally exactly the number of minimum required parking, that was a very serious concern. So we've worked with our fire protection engineer in particular and our engineering reviewer regarding the Freedom Avenue parking situation. And they say essentially as long as you can get fire apparatus through, there's not a requirement to reduce or restrict parking there, which, as you saw in the images previously, the photographs, there's already parking on both sides. So if it was an issue, it would have already been an issue. I don't see that would need to discontinue. Obviously, it reduces the parking availability there. There's going to be driveways you can't park in front of, but there are still some locations for parking of vehicles.
Yeah, I would almost say the owners might have taken too good of care of this property, because it kind of looks like a park when you look at it on Google Earth. And like I pulled up on Google Earth and you see a basketball net set on that side of the street, so obviously the kids play there. It's easy to see the concerns, but at the end of the day, it's not a park, it's zoned for it, so. I don't know, was there ever any kind of consideration on, parks is always a hard thing of making just a small section there for the kids to play or something like that. That would appreciate a lot of the people across the street. I'm sure it would help. But at the end of the day, that's not our decision.
No.
So.
Right.
But some of my comments are geared towards just the appearance and the unit count is fine, but I think that we're a victim of what we've seen developed recently. Specifically, I'll name it, Nels Acres down the road on 26. They've got units lined up in there, and I think when we get units of more than 3 or 4 like this, and they're lined up with 6 and 7 in a row that are contiguous, it just looks so dense. There's not much green space. There's not much space between the units. And so I would like to see this broken up a bit. And I know that the site is challenging because of the limitations you have. You're putting a road in and the entrance, and you've got retention issues, detention issues. I would like to see this broken up a bit to where the units were in 4s and 3s and not 6s. It just looks so dense when we do that. It looks, I don't know, it almost looks like row houses in Baltimore because it gets just so long and structural. And it's not an apartment complex. These are, fee simple condominiums, right? And so, again, as a developer, I know you take pride in what you do. I'll just tell you, when we see what's going on down at Nels Acres, am I the only one that thinks breaking it up a little bit, because we are a bedroom community, and specifically Freedom is that to the nth degree. And then from a parking standpoint, to echo what Matt was saying, it would be nice if someone throws a birthday party for a grandparent in this, or they just throw a party for a grandchild or something, and you have 10 people show up, it'll be a mess. And I just was wondering if there's a way to build, a parking area where there were 5 or 6 spaces that were common for the entire group, grouping of homes there. So those are my primary comments. But does anybody else on this commission feel the way I do concerning lining them up like this in groups of? Do we think breaking it up, if it's possible to break it up, do we think there's a benefit to that, or am I the only one that thinks that?
I think there's a benefit to it. It might be difficult to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question I would have, is there drainage that leaves this area? Because now it looks like there's a lot of low areas in there where it's capturing a lot of the runoff water currently. I
Yeah.
know the county has lots of ponds on there. But does some of the water leave that site?
Does some of it leave it?
Leaves that site, that area. Does some of it go across to the pond on the other side of Johnsville?
Forgive me for my question, but are you talking about now or as a part of the design?
Well, now.
Now, in the middle, probably about the middle of that site right now, there is somewhat of what you might think. It doesn't slope as aggressively
Yeah.
as you might want, and it probably does get wet down in there. And that's where it's right where that property line, fence line is right now.
It almost acts as a basin in there now.
Kind of. Well, the front part along Johnsville does.
Yep.
I mean, it is a low area in there, and I think it was probably because when they cleared that site at one point, they put in some kind of detention ponds or something for erosion control, and it was kind of left that way.
So the buildings are all straight line. Is it possible to stagger them a little bit, like
Offset.
even a
Yeah.
foot or so?
So I will note, you might be thinking, I might have made an error in putting in the other plans from last year. The plans from last year showed them all in a straight line.
Right.
Okay, so these were the plans from last year, and they were just straight lines across the back essentially. The current plans do incorporate staggering of those buildings to some
Okay.
extent.
It is typical for a builder to stagger them, so you do not have that apartment
Right.
facade
Complex
look.
look, yeah.
There are certain staggers you can have depending on construction and how it's done. So you have 8 inches or multiples of 8 inches maybe, or a foot that you can stagger them between units.
Yeah, I said it looks like definitely in the design that there could be areas for kids to go out there and play or whatever, but with all the retention ponds that you have to have by our county code, it's a little tough to
Limits
get
it,
that
yeah.
done. Very limited.
So this is a retirement village, which is designed for the people.
Over 55.
Right. So I understand trying to accommodate, but I think our purview is more limited to
It is.
what,
What goes
They're
on
looking
the
at.
site, yeah.
Right. I'm just curious, basically the one lot is split into commercial and residential. How many, under those, the old boundaries, how many homes, what's the density of the homes in the commercial? What's the density of homes in the residential, in the R10?
So are you asking what this plan shows, how many houses is in each zoning
Drew
district?
the old line.
Yeah, it's right, you can actually see it, it's right here.
So how many units are on either side?
There's 18 in the commercial.
And 11, looks like on Freedom.
So
right?
13 and, yeah, so it's
13 and 18,
31.
yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And this is just for my education with our county code, as always. We get to, these are condominium lots. How did we get the condominium lots?
So,
Definition.
sure, I'm not sure we have a definition, because it's not actually part of the county process. So condominium lots is something that, my understanding, the state allows, not requires, the state allows for a project like this, or for an apartment-style building, where they don't own the entire property, but they can own fee simple portions of that property. And it allows them to divide it without going through an actual subdivision, because again, you're not dividing a lot, you're dividing a portion of ownership. Yeah, I don't think that we have condominium lots in our code, because again, it's not part of our, process. Yeah.
But we're saying they're condominium lots, not subdivision lots, so.
Correct. So a subdivision lot, again, it divides off the property totally free and clear. You own that whole thing, and that's it. I don't know the exact legal differences
Okay.
between them, and perhaps someone here is a little bit more educated on that. But in theory, we could be and might be looking at this plan without any reference to lots at all. If you get rid of these lot lines that are interior to the site.
No, I understand that, but
Yeah.
when I read through the write-up, I saw condominium, and I was like, well, that's a new one. And I guess you're suggesting that it's a state thing, not a county thing.
Yeah.
And Mike, this is gonna be done from you envision the maintenance of this from a landscaping standpoint being an HOA?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's really, it's deceptive in
Yeah.
a way, in the way it's presented, because you have a lot more green space, but in essence, it's really no different than let's say, for sake of argument, a high-rise apartment building.
Right.
Right.
You only own the space that you live in. That's what's gonna be here, is they only really own the space that they live in.
Okay.
so that's what I was kind of, that same thought getting to. So if they're condo lots, will the owners have condominium fees?
Yes.
Yeah,
Or-
maintain for maintenance.
Maintenance, cutting the lawns, all that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Insurance.
Yeah.
And I've sold several communities like this. The house sits on the property. The owner is just like a condominium in an apartment where your walls inside, and I think some of them do have roofs that are included. But the ironic part is when the county taxes you, they pretty much tax you based on what it would be for the whole lot. So, but, yeah, but it's a good concept.
So the only reason I included that description in my report and in our discussion here is because it's shown on the plans. Like I was saying, typically, that's not something that we review. It's not part of the county regulations. Normally, we would review a site plan like this, comprehensive, the whole site. They get their bonding in place, and they get their building permits okayed, and then they record a plat with the state saying, we can sell each of these units to individual people, instead of being a landlord, essentially.
I'm fine. I just, that's the first time I've seen that in any of the
Yeah.
site plans or whatever we've reviewed. So I was just curious how that works. Thank you.
Yes. The one thing I had seen in a lot of the comments, and we've gotten quite a few emails on it, is a lot of people would rather see those lots along Freedom Avenue flipped around to the inside.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure I would rather see a retention pond across the street than the front of a house. I'm sure it would help with traffic a little bit for them. But what kind of challenges did that make? Was that ever looked at in part of the plan, and what kind of challenges would that make? I'm sure it would change the traffic impact study
right.
coming out on Johnsonville, obviously.
It was, and probably for myself, the bigger issue I had with it, laying it out, was when you turn those inward, now you create a lot more impervious area.
Yeah.
To either extend that one road that we had to service those, or the amount of driveway you'd have to pull that in, and it just didn't make any sense. It also kind of inhibited the amount of space, green space that you had left over for. Once you turn them in, now you get a driveway as opposed to a backyard, and so that either way it kind of created challenges, but this created more green space overall.
I've got a question globally, and just for our edification. you know, Jeff, when, as a civil engineer, when you design something like this and you put curb and gutter in, are you allowed to use that curb and gutter in your calculations as when you calculate how quickly rainfall flows off the site? Because that slows things down a little bit in the parking areas, right? So when you put something like that in and you put curb and gutter in, does that help us? Does it help you on those
Wow.
calcs?
You asked a complicated question. It doesn't sound complicated. In reality,
Yeah.
if you think about it from the standpoint of, you think about the way that we determine, forget about the water quality. In other
Okay.
words, cleaning the water, because impervious area is impervious area, and it's being affected by the oil and grit from the cars and whatever.
Right.
So we're talking about how fast water travels.
Right.
And anytime you put more impervious area, the water travels faster. Anytime that you put something in that creates more of a confined space, travels a lot faster.
Really?
And so once it's no different. If you take a garden hose and hook it up to your house spigot,
Interesting.
and it's a 1-inch hose,
Yeah.
the water doesn't come out as fast as it does if you make it a 1-inch hose. It confines it, and it creates more pressure for it to come out. So they have a slope, which creates pressure, and the amount of water that comes down, you put it into a curb,
Yep.
which is really not flat. If you ever look at a curb, it actually kind of slopes into the 6-inch rise that the curb has.
Okay.
Now it starts to go faster in that.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. Interesting. Thank you.
Anything else?
One last question, and this isn't global, this is specific to the site. So the road at the end, it comes to a T. What's going on down there? Is that just a turnaround? What are we doing?
Basically, we did that for fire protection from the standpoint the fire truck gets down there, they have a way to get out, an easy way to get out.
All right.
You guys, okay? Okay. Okay, before I turn it over to public comment, in order to speak, you must have signed in for public comment. Please state your name, address, and talk into the microphone to facilitate audio and video recording. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Citizen testimony is not a question and answer session. If you have questions, staff will be glad to talk to you after the meeting. And finally, if anybody fails to comply with these rules, I can call the person out of order and require him or her to leave the meeting. So, with that, I open it up for public speaking. Would anybody like to speak on this? A quiet group. Okay. So we need a vote. A vote.
Yeah, the determination is what it says here. I think in the past, we've handled that as votes. I'm not sure how else you would lock in your considerations.
So you're asking us to approve this plan to be moved up the food chain?
A conditional use to be moved up to the.
Right, it's specifically, code requires the commission, for determinations regarding density, exterior design, and site layout. Code requires the commission's review and determinations prior to a hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I'm not sure, maybe Liz has input about if that is a vote, if you're making a determination.
I would make that as a vote, that you have made the determination that is acceptable to move forward to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Specifically regarding the density, exterior design, and site layout. Essentially, what we're saying is that the number of units, the type of units, the layout of the units, and the access is what the BZA can see and approve, and nothing more, and nothing different.
Okay.
Well, before we vote, I'm going to say, I would like to see it spread out a little more and have units in 3s and 4s rather than the quantity that you're showing contiguous there. I know that's challenging on a site that size, but I'm just in terms of the comments that I've gotten back from people who are looking at these units and what's going on down the road on 26, and I've had a bunch of people not accost me, so to speak, but these are the comments I've heard. I live in the Freedom District. This is what I'm hearing back from people about, gosh, could you not have done something more to create more green space in there between, units? We've got a place over in Ocean City, and it's not that dense, and that sort of thing. And so, people are looking for these things. There is demand in the area for units like this, but I'm actually being asked, can we not encourage some developers? And look, I don't have any control over what developers do. They do what they want to do. But can we not get people to develop villas and those kinds of things, that are entirely not connected? So my comments on that are such that I would like to see it spread out a bit before we send it up. But if I'm the only one up here who says that, you guys can, we can vote on it, and I'll do whatever you guys think. But we're seeing a lot of these over these age-restricted communities, and I'd like to see them less structural, less apartment-like, if we're going to continue to do this stuff. And I apologize. You're the next one to the trough. It's unfair, but I'm just saying, we've done it, and the community has not been all that enthusiastic about what's been done. So I'm asking for some relief here.
Kirsten, I'm sorry. Can you remind us again what we are approving, suggesting to send up?
So the exact terminology, again, is the determinations regarding density, exterior design, and site layout. Determination prior to the Board of Zoning Appeals sending them a request for conditional use for retirement village.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that means to say that this plan is the plan you're looking at and it's the only one you can forward, or if it means to say you can say, sure, you can go there as long as you do this first. I'm not too sure if we can do the go there if you do this first, specific to Mr. Lester's comments there regarding spreading them out a little bit more.
I believe you can send it up and say, we would like you to consider this. Here's our comments, but you can't make the requirement of them that they must basically accept these changes before it gets to them.
Okay, but before it gets approved, we'll see it again here.
So yes, the following the Board of Zoning Appeals case, basically this is going to look like a regular site plan to you.
Right.
You're going to see a concept plan where you can make comments and provide direction, and you'll see the final plan either by the chair or as a group. The caveat being, if you approved the layout and the density and the exterior design now, it says it should not change moving forward. So let's say that in response to your comments, they shift some of those buildings and spread them apart and they lose a house or two. That's a change in the exterior design and density, right? So I'm not too sure if what we're seeing now is what gets locked in.
Well, just if I could make a motion along these lines, I would do so. So I'll just ask. I don't want to slow down this process because these gentlemen are burning a candle. I would move that we approve this site plan to go up to the BZA with the knowledge that we're fine with the density, but we would like to see some refinement in the site plan itself in terms of the number of contiguous units per complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laura.
May I? Thank you.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Laura Mattias, Bureau Chief of Development Review. If you are requesting that they modify the site layout, that is one of the things you're looking at today is the site layout.
Right.
That would be a modification to this plan. It would have to go back through our technical agencies. It is going to potentially modify the number of units, potentially modify the stormwater management design, et cetera. So it did have to go through technical reviews before it came to you. And one of our requirements is they meet certain items on the stormwater checklist in order to come to you. So we know that this complies with codes at a certain level. It would have to go back through those agencies with a modified design, come back in front of you to approve that site layout and potentially different density before it could move to the BZA. So those are the implications if you decide to go that route. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Questions?
So, yes, please.
Sorry, if I could make a comment in terms of just a little bit of the history. We did initially propose the 54-unit condominium project, which was going to be 4 stories. And a lot of the modifications made to this were in an effort to try to address some of the concerns. The density, 54, and we were going to pursue 10 units, so all in a lot more impact from both height, visual, et cetera. So certainly I understand the perspective of this looks like a dense project, but this we tried to factor in community comment as well as a builder who's a local builder. It's not a big national regional name. I don't mind telling you it's Williamsburg Homes, who does very nice product. And so they were a big part of this design as well. So certainly respect that there's concern on freedom that says, hey, we're going to be looking at blocks of building, but it's a very nice design, and it's predicated on trying to reduce a density that we initially proposed.
Yeah, personally, I think the other thing that might change, if you did try to break them up, obviously you're going to increase the cost per unit by a decent amount.
Yep.
Too.
Yeah.
I've seen projects like this, and they're really not bad. I mean, to spread them out, I know the stormwater is always a challenge with any of these projects. And this way here, they do have some backyard. I'm kind of fine with it. I know what Peter's saying, but at the end of the day, you're trying to make a product that you can sell, number one, and have people there that are happy.
So could some of Peter's concerns be addressed with landscaping? Just to, because it's a visual thing.
It is a visual thing, and guys, this is something that we probably need to address on down the road and for future projects, because it feels like this horse has kind of left the barn, and I don't mean to walk back. I firmly believe what I've said, and again, these are not comments that are. It's not that I don't care, because I do. I wouldn't have brought it up, but the truth is, and I know something about the Williamsburg folks, because I've seen some of their projects go up and they do good work. So this isn't an issue with the developer, it's more of an issue of how we're implementing these over 55 communities, and we're seeing a lot of them because of the school issues. This is the only way to get this thing past go, because you can't build a normal home, because if you did, it wouldn't meet the concurrency standards because of the schools. So this isn't the last one of these we're going to see. And I'll just say to county staff, in the future, let's encourage developers when they're considering a site plan like this to try to break this up a little bit more than you bring them in with 5 or 6. I'm going to encourage us as a commission to really push back on that, because this is a bedroom community, and there is a desire to have open spaces and less of a row home type look to the community. So with that, I will withdraw what I said. Let's rock and roll, and I move that we move this on up the food chain.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is that
Is that a good motion?
good
Is
to
that
say,
acceptable?
up the food
We
chain?
need,
Would you like him to revise that?
Yeah.
If you would not mind, please.
I move that we approve this and send it on up to BZA
Conditional use.
for conditional use.
Specifically the density, exterior design, and site layout, because you're not approving the actual plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Conditional use for a retirement village.
Yeah.
Piece
There
all
you
that
go.
together.
You got it. Did you second that?
What she
Okay.
said.
We need a voice vote.
Mr. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Kane?
Yes.
Mr. Lester?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Swenson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gordon? Madam Chair, please let the record reflect. We have 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Thank you. Good luck. And I will say, looking at your plan, it does look like there's quite a bit of green space, so
Yeah.
hopefully. And we have a lot of these because there's a lot of people aging. Would like to not have to go to the alternative.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly right.
One
Thank
day,
you, guys.
maybe you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good luck.
Okay. Yes. Number 9, special report, Van Aller 2.
Wow.
Cleaning house.
Well, we know how to clear.
You know how to clear a room, Pete.
Hang on, I'm sorry.
The engineer is not present, so we,
Do we table this and move,
we would have to
reschedule it?
table it and move it to next month's agenda.
Sure.
I apologize.
Okay.
I don't know the
This is good.
situation, but
I'm gonna make my train. Let's go.
Yep. So
Okay,
change to the agenda.
thank you.
thank you
Thank you.
for letting us know. Item 10, Tawnytown annexation number 49.
Eyes. Presentation.
Daphne, which one is the presentation?
It looks like up there.
Briefing.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, good morning, everybody. I'm Javier Toro. I'm here presenting a request from annexation that was received on March 27th from the city of Tawnytown. This is for the property at 3300 Harney Road. The property is composed of, actually, it's 2 parcels that are going to be merged. We have parcel number 1, 3300 Harney Road, parcel number 2, 3212 Harney Road. Parcel number 1 has a total acreage of .4682. Parcel number 2, a total acreage of .1123, totaling .5806 acres. In this case, the property is it's contiguous to the corporate limits and within the growth area of the city of Tawnytown. And the reason for this annexation is that the property owner was notified by the Carroll County Health Department that they had a failing sewage system, and due to the cost, the best option is for them to get connected to the sewer system from the city of Tawnytown. In this case, you can see the property, as I mentioned, total .5805 acres. The city of Tawnytown confirmed that it will stay within the same category as the county R10,000 residential, so no zoning waiver is requested, is required for this property. It has a medium density residential designated land use as per the city of Tawnytown 2010 Community Comprehensive Plan, and currently is in the category for water long range W6 for Carroll County, and also for sewage it's under long range category. Our recommendation is that the city give public notice by posting the property prior to the date of the public hearing and notifying all adjoining property owners. We will be presenting to the Board of County Commissioners on Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. I don't know if you have any questions.
No, seems like the right thing to do, for sure.
Straightforward.
Yeah.
You looking for a motion?
Yeah, so typically, we would include the Planning Commission's recommendation in the report to the to the Board of County Commissioners. So if you have a recommendation, we'll accept it.
I've moved something up the food chain once already. You go for it. Matt, you're looking at me.
So I'll make the motion that we send
Don't you
this.
dare say it right.
I'm looking for what it's supposed to say on here.
That we recommend the annexation as proposed by staff.
There you go.
I'll second it.
Voice vote?
Yes, voice vote on this one,
Okay.
please.
Mr. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Kane?
Yes.
Mr. Lester?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Swenson?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon? Madam Chair, please let the record reflect that we have 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I think I forgot public comment on that.
I don't think there is any.
So, was there anybody that wanted to comment on that parcel?
Good thing.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 11. Mr. Kane. Education Facilities Master Plan. You're going to give us an introduction.
Morning.
Did you have any you wanted me to show?
So I'm back again. This time every year, the 10-year facility master plan gets presented to the Board of Education, and then we come before the Planning Commission, give you an update. And then in June, the Board of Ed will approve the document, and it goes to the state. It's one of the requirements for state funding in our capital projects that we do a 10-year facilities master plan. So, and it's due July 1, so that's kind of what the timing's about. It is the basis of our capital request. So this is a 10-year facility master plan, and then our capital request is kind of the 6-year funding plan to implement it. It's a 170-page document, so it's a pretty thorough document. A lot of the information stays the same from year to year. I update pieces of it, new demographic information. Sometimes there's changes in program, instructional program. Sometimes the names change. I have to update those. I do include the updated enrollment projections are part of this document. So every year we do a 10-year enrollment projection, and then that becomes the basis of looking at capacity needs is one component of the facility needs of the school system. Today, I don't have a prepared presentation. I just wanted to give you some highlights. This year's plan, actually, the projects listed are the same as last year. The only change is a couple of projects' timing have changed, and the enrollment projections have changed. So I'll start enrollment projection-wise. The actual enrollment that showed up in September, we use September 30th as kind of the official enrollment date for any school year, because that's what the state uses to fund our operating budget. We were expecting to see an increase of over 300, I think 350 or 60 kids this school year from the prior school year, but we actually only saw an increase of 20 kids overall, so we essentially stayed flat. So that new information, that new history that's then used to project the next 10 years, it obviously has lowered the projections based on that new historical information. So the new projections are lower looking out over the next 10 years than the previous set. What that means specific to projects is there were two capacity projects that were in the plan. It was Freedom Elementary Addition and Sykesville Middle Addition. It does have an impact on state funding, potential state funding, because the state uses a formula to look at whether you justify them funding the addition or not, and they look at projected enrollments versus your capacity. And they don't just look at your one school you're asking for, they look at the school and the surrounding schools that are adjacent to it. So in other words, if you were overcrowded at one school, but you had 300 seats at all the adjacent schools, the state would say, we don't have any reason to give you money for an addition because you could redistrict. We have other needs across the state that are higher, so we're going to give our money to other jurisdictions. So the new projections will potentially have an impact on the state funding for Freedom and Sykesville. We're still working through with the state staff on whether they'll be justified for any money or not. We won't know that probably until closer to the fall when we do our capital request. But there is a possibility that the state funding might not be there in fiscal year 27. Ultimately, the Board of Ed and the Board of County Commissioners would have to decide if they wanted to still move the project forward in the timeline that's on here. They'd have to look at funding it locally, the complete projects. We're not quite there yet for that discussion, but I would anticipate that that'll be coming in the capital. Our capital request goes to the county and the state in October, so that would probably kick off those discussions. In the meantime, we are in the middle of designing the additions and submitting site plans for both projects through that process. We are moving forward with the design and the site plan process to be ready to keep it on schedule until such time as we're told otherwise. That's our plan. We see no benefit in pausing now. We're halfway through designing it, and that would just set us back if we were to need to move forward with it. If the boards decided they wanted to move forward with it, even funding it locally, we need to be ready for that. So there's notes in the master plan about the projections and the possible impact to state funding, but there's been no change in the timing of the projects. The other changes, as far as somewhat related to capacity, but more instructional program, is that we have a series of pre-K additions in the plan. We broke it into 3 phases. Phase 1 is actually currently being designed, and the site plans have been submitted. There's 6 elementary schools that we identified as being the top priority. Those 6 are moving forward, and we plan to start construction, funding, assuming the state funding is there in fiscal year 27. We plan to start next summer, and those projects will take about a year to build. Phase 2 and Phase 3 of those pre-K additions, which is Phase 2 is 4 more elementary schools, and Phase 3 is 5 elementary schools. Because of new guidance from the state regarding blueprint and how the pre-K implementation is going to happen, we've pushed those out in the calendar. Phase 2 got pushed 1 year out, and Phase 3 got pushed a couple years out. So they're still in the plan, but the timing of those has just been pushed out a little bit. With those 6 pre-K, Phase 1 pre-K additions and the 4 kindergarten additions that we're currently starting construction this year, which we added a pre-K classroom as part of those 4 kindergarten additions. We're going to be adding a total of 10 pre-K classrooms in the next 2 years. So that's 200 seats of pre-K capacity that we're adding. So that's part of why we've decided to push out Phase 2 and Phase 3. We feel like that additional capacity that we're actually moving forward in the next 2 years should get us through the next 4 to 5 years. So obviously, we do this annually. Things can change, especially with blueprint and the guidance from the state and the operating budget. But as of now, those are the major things in the plan. The rest of the plan consists of, or as far as projects, there's a couple of modernizations identified that Liberty High is one, William Winchester Elementary. We're asking for money next year to do a feasibility study for Liberty High, but at this point, we've been asking the last few years. It hasn't been funded yet, but it continues to be in the plan. Obviously, a high school is a big project, so funding a major renovation or replacement high school is a significant capital project for both the county and the state to take on. So, but they're still in the plan. They'll still be a part of our request, and then the rest of the projects are roof replacement projects, HVAC replacement projects, more systems that need to be replaced. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's the highlights. I know, I'm not sure if you received, because our board I just presented it to our board last Wednesday, so I emailed the plan the next day, but I know your timing as far as when you get your documents was a little earlier than that, but it's a lot to take in, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And typically, Bill comes back a second time, so
Right.
we'll plan on sharing that document. You'll have time to digest it, and then he'll be back next month for any additional questions you have or comments that you want to provide in the letter that we share with the Board of Ed.
Right.
Thank you. Question?
Without going through the report, where the enrollment change, was that mostly in the Eldersburg area, or was it feathered out, or?
It was spread out, but there was in the Eldersburg area specifically, because those elementaries had been seeing growth the previous few years, and their projections based on that historical growth they were seeing were higher. Then when the kids didn't show up, there's a more dramatic impact to potentially some of those schools, but it wasn't just confined to that area. We did see it across the county as far as not as many kids showing up. And specific to a project like Freedom Elementary, the enrollment projections are still pretty close to where they were a couple of years ago. They haven't changed as much, but it's the adjacent schools at Carrolltown and Eldersburg where they didn't see, the last two, actually, not just last fall, but the previous fall, they didn't see as many kindergartners as we were projecting. I think when you add them together, it was a total of 70 or 80 less kindergartners than we projected over the last 2 years at just those two schools. Kindergarten is the hardest grade to project. A kid's born and then 5 years later they show up. Sometimes they're born somewhere else, the people move here. Sometimes they're born here and those folks move to another place. So, it's a difficult thing to project. So that's generally where the projections are off the most, but they're still usually relatively within a percentage or two of projections. But you will see sometimes at specific schools, sometimes 20 less kids show up, and then the next year 30 more kids show up. It's just that's just the nature, I guess, of projecting kindergarten.
Yep. Okay.
So, William, just stay on that topic just for a second. So we don't see this as this is simply a demographic, and I'll preface this by saying the way you guys estimate this stuff is amazing to me, because y'all are historically so dead on. It's kind of scary, and I mean that as a compliment. So as we talk about our master plan and in these subcommittees and everything else, do you see this change? Is this do we not know what to attribute it to? Is it a trend? Is it people homeschooling? Is it people sending their kids to private schools? Or, just the numbers just didn't materialize?
Well, so there are a couple things, because obviously when in the fall when less kids showed up, it has a funding implication, because the state funds on a per pupil amount. So we had less state money coming in than we expected, which added to the budget issues that we dealt with in the request. But so we weren't the only one. Other surrounding, I looked at called 5 or 6 other planners that I know that do projections. 4 or 5 of them experienced about a 1% or so less than they projected. We were about 1.5% less, something in that range of the total. I also looked at the number of permits that were issued in new homes, new units last year was historically one of the lowest it might have been the lowest in my 20 years in doing this. I think it was 166 or in that range, which well below the 300 to 400 average that we've had the last 10 years. Net migration information from the Maryland Department of Planning. I don't have FY25, which would have been through last July, but I believe it was FY24. Net migration total gains was in the 400 range. The previous 2 years were 1,500 new residents. So probably from 2009 to 2016 or 17, we had 5 or 6 years where we actually lost population based on the state's net migration numbers. A lot of that could be attributed to the housing market after the Great Recession, and for whatever reason people were moving around less. But then there was a pickup, and those 2 years of 1,500 gains in the net migration were back to numbers that we saw in the earlier 2000s. So there was growth. Now, the new home construction wasn't as high, obviously, but that you would attribute it to resale of existing home stock. But the drop off to 400 was, and I'll get the new MDP information, I think probably will be out this summer, but I think some of that had to do with, this is me personally, I think some of it had to do with interest rates rising around that time.
Sure.
And people being less likely to move, relocate because of being able to get the mortgage. But to some degree it's a guess, but it's kind of an educated guess. But that's some of the reasons I would attribute it, is we just didn't see as many people moving into the county than we did the previous 2 years. That can change pretty quickly. Obviously, those couple years that we saw right coming out of COVID, we did see folks moving into the county and the kids showing up. But there's a lot of things that play into that. There's economic growth rates, like you said, homeschool, private school, pandemics. There's so many factors that play into how many kids show up in a school system that it can change from, and that's part of the reason we do the projection document. We do it every year, and that's again another state requirement. We have to do 10-year projections every year, but it makes sense because it needs to be updated every year to make sure we're as accurate as we can be.
Yeah.
Do you track homeschoolers?
So we do. We have folks, obviously, who are responsible for homeschools. So I talk to the folks in our student services department, and actually, the homeschool numbers. Obviously, there was a change in during COVID. Those couple of year and a half or so, there was a lot of fluctuations up and down, but the last few years it's been pretty stable, actually, because that was one of the things I was being asked is, are we seeing an increase in homeschoolers or private schoolers? Is that why we're not seeing as many kids? And then those numbers are, I would say essentially the same. I mean, might go up 30 or down 30, but I would say from the numbers we're talking about when we're talking about 26,000 students in our school system, those numbers aren't really changing enough to say, oh, that's why we didn't see the extra 300 kids. So,
Okay.
Question, comment. As we're going through the master plan, that's one of the things we're seeing is our problem is with less kids is that, number one, You look at Eldersburg area, the only thing we look at is age restricted now because they're so close to the cap that no one wants to build single-family homes in that area because there's school restrictions. You know, really as a county, I think Tawnytown's probably grown as much as any place right now. You know, Westminster's been strapped with water issues. They haven't been able to do a whole lot. Hopefully they get that straightened out. But, you know, as a whole, you know, we need to work together because we're losing the younger generation because we have all these restrictions on building. You know, there used to be a lot of small home builders that would build on, you know, single lots. And there's so few of them now and they charge so much that it's, you can't go out and buy a lot and build a house and not have more money than you can go buy something somewhere for a lot less. So I think as a whole, that's a problem, and I think it's school system and county, the restrictions on so many things, it makes it hard to do it. But, you know, the Eldersburg area is their growth area in the county, and, you know, no one's coming to try to build single-family homes down there anymore because they can't. So they're hand-tied. So that area is not gonna grow anymore. And the cost of our homes in that area just continue to go up because no one's building anything new.
Yeah, you
Except
know,
age restricted.
and this is, kind of goes back to some of my comments that I was making about the previous plan, is that what I'm hearing from people is, that are my age, frankly, we're empty nesters, you know, I would move into one of these age-restricted areas, but I don't want to live in a unit that's 4 and 5, you know, why can't you guys approve something that's a little softer? And in order to find it, they either have to go to the northern part of our county where there is a development up there like that, or into Pennsylvania, or into Virginia. Or you move to Florida or Delaware. You know, you move to Bethany Beach, and because they are doing it there. And so, you know, the hope is that we'd get some of these people moving out of their home into the Nels Acres, and that would turn over some of the inventory. We're just not seeing it because people want to stay. They just don't like what's being built. So, you know, those are being absorbed, but they're not necessarily being absorbed by people in our county.
Yeah. And like one of the things is I have a problem with is, you know, when we look at age restricted and they're 3 and 4 bedroom, it's like, why do you need a 3 and 4 bedroom age restricted house?
Right.
It's one thing to have 3, maybe you have 2 guests over at one time, but
You have visitor.
4 bedroom age restricted, it's like, I don't know about that.
One day.
If I could just jump in super quickly, some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of projections for different age groups and that sort of thing, we have covered in some of our previous presentations on our changing demographics. As Bill described, I mean, projections is a little bit of a science and also a little bit of an art. Some of the things that we've identified based on the round 10 projections for 2040, so this is, you know, like a generation from now, do show the school-age population having a little bit of a bubble, because there is a bubble right now that's been moving through where you've got teenagers, high schoolers, young adults who were part of a large cohort. Once they start having kids, then of course that number will probably, so it's very cyclical. It's very hard to predict based on kind of trends that are outside of our control, based on things that make certain types of housing more or less available, that sort of stuff. But the one thing we know is that it's never going to just remain the same. And even if current enrollments are lower than they were projected to be, it's probably not going to continue like that forever. We'll probably see another uptick. So we just have to constantly be trying to respond to what's happening right now with our best estimates of what the future would hold, and then be able to be flexible and adaptive enough to respond to those conditions when they change.
Yeah. My daughter is an OB, and I'm sure they're doing plenty of babies, so I think
She's
we'll
doing her
see.
part.
Well, she's delivering them, but
Thank
there
you for the
are
clarification.
plenty, so, because they're pretty busy. And in talking about, we are going to talk about the MPDUs. So that's something that we'll be looking at too. So any other questions?
Thanks.
Public comment.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, public comment. Is there any public here besides Mr. Staley? I see him out there.
So we will share that
Thank you.
plan with you all, and Bill will be back to answer any additional questions, and we'll have a letter prepared for you to share with the Board of Ed that we can build in any additional comments that you
Right.
have.
Okay.
No, I did want to make, because unfortunately, I found a mistake after it got presented to the Board of Ed. In section 2, there's a list of schools that are inadequate and approaching inadequate by the county's concurrency management ordinance. Sykesville Middle was mistakenly listed as inadequate in 2025. When it goes back to the Board of Ed, that'll get taken out, but just so you know, I should have highlighted this, that the only school that'll be listed as inadequate based on the projections in the plan and the county's ordinance is Freedom Elementary in years 2025 and 26. And that's not fiscal. That's the next school year and the year after, sorry. And then there's one school approaching inadequate, that's Sykesville Middle in 2026 and 27. The additions are in the projection, the capacity, so that's why they stop being inadequate and approaching inadequate in the years after that. If the additions, say they got pushed out or whatever, then it would change that slightly, but I can't believe I'm at the meeting, I'm reading and I'm like, wait, that's not right. And I don't know, I think it was a leftover from last year that didn't get deleted. 170 pages, sometimes you miss things, but I just wanted to let you know that there was a mistake in there, so,
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Laura?
Hi. While we're setting up there, the engineer from item number 9, Dan Staley, is here with us now. So if you'd like to add that back onto the agenda at the end, or whatever works for you, we could do that today at your discretion.
So is that something we need to vote on?
We can do a group motion, like a motion and then a group vote on that if you want to revise the agenda to re-include it.
No, only because Pete may have to leave, so if,
Hard stop.
I do have a hard stop, yeah.
yeah, if we need to vote on that project, maybe we should do it sooner.
That project does have a determination that's being requested, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Bring it, do it now.
Do it now. Michael said do it now.
So we're going to make a motion to amend the agenda and move my item 9 to a new item 12 so that we can review that now after the education facilities master plan and before the master plan assessment phase. Is that okay? That's my motion.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't use food chain on that.
Thank you for not using food chain. Greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Sorry, Daphne. The shuffle. Appreciate it. Could I have the mouse too? comfort zone.
Pass that over to Laura.
Is that- Thank you, thank you. Oh, there. I don't see it,
I know.
but it's highlighting the slides. What is happening? Okay.
You got it?
Or not.
Okay, let's try this.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have your?
I can't. Oh, here.
Is that it, or is it the one?
It is this one, it's just further.
Oh,
down in the
okay.
slideshow, so that's- I should be able to navigate it if I can.
Whoops.
Oh, that's a lot. All right. Slideshow, file, current. Phew. Hey, we did it. Thank you. All right. Sorry, resituating. I think we got this. All right, Laura Matthias with the Bureau of Development Review. The agenda does have David Beecraft's name on there for this project, but we change it up every now and then, so we changed it up. And with me today, we have the special report, and with me today is Dan Staley, the engineer on the project. Anything you'd like to say in the moment before we get going, Dan?
Well, not to get started, we'll wait until
Okay.
after you're done.
Okay, very good. Fantastic. So, thank you. Again, this is a special report before you today in relation to a minor subdivision called Van Aller 2. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay. Going with the phonetic Van Aller. So, I'm going to give you a little background on the subdivision, which is going to help you with the request. So, the request is specifically a modification to the width of a use in common driveway. As you're all very familiar with, our standards for use in common driveways call for a 12-foot wide driveway, and the request in this case is a modification down to 10 feet. I'm going to explain the details of that because this is kind of an interesting scenario. We'll start with the fact that this is an M150073 project. The 15 in that relates to the date which they started into this endeavor. So it's a minor subdivision that was opened with the county in 2015, which, among other things, means that it is subject to the code that was in place at that time. So I did put into this report that code and how it reads from that point in time. So the request, the determination here lies with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm going to read specifically that modifications. So where the Planning Commission finds that because of unusual circumstances of shape and topography or other physical features or conditions of the proposed subdivision, or because of the nature of adjacent developments, extraordinary hardship may result from strict compliance with the UIC design requirements of this Chapter 155.025 in the Development Review Manual, there may be granted a modification when requested by the subdivider or developer. So that process is as such. The developer did come to us, the engineer, on behalf of the developer, submitted a request for the modification. We then, the Bureau, distributes that request in their words, to some technical agencies to look at this, to evaluate. So it did go to the Office of Public Safety, the Bureau of Resource Management, and Engineering Review. What I have before you today is an outline of what the request is, and then what those agencies, how they responded to that request as well, to help you in your determination. Okay, so the subject properties, the property is located in the southern part of the county. We're actually almost at the county line here on Old Washington Road on the east side. And you'll see it highlighted there. It's a triangular piece. I'm going to zoom in with the next slide. Okay. So the proposal actually spans 3 parcels. There's 2 parcels included in the triangular piece right now, and the third parcel is adjoining to the south. All 3 of these are under the same ownership, which is Kelly and Danielle Cumberland, correct? Yes. So currently, there was a Van Aller 1 subdivision, and it did create this lot, which you'll see is built with a residence, and a second parcel here, which you'll see has a stream running through it. There's no FEMA 100-year floodplain there, but there is a stream running through it. You'll also see lots and lots of trees on this property as well as the adjoining property to the south. So in the progression over time, this residence is now occupied by the Cumberlands, and they do possess this, as I said, they own this parcel as well. The driveway to this residence is right here. Follow my cursor if you can through this rectangular adjoining parcel, up, it clips the corner of this other parcel, and up to the residence. So that's what exists today. And with this Van Aller 2 subdivision, they are looking to take that triangular portion and reconfigure and subdivide. They will get an additional 2 lots of subdivision there, plus that existing house, okay? So that would make that 3 users on this driveway, and per our code, that puts that into a use in common driveway. It goes from a private driveway to a use in common driveway. So the proposal is to add those couple users. Then, the second part, I'm going to go to some pictures of the site. This is the existing driveway. It is hard surfaced, it is paved, it is also approximately 10 feet wide right now. Of course, I'm sure that it varies slightly by inches because it's a private driveway. Okay, so here's that subdivision proposal with Van Aller 2 to create those lots. And then they want to utilize that existing 10-foot wide driveway to the maximum extent that they can. And here's what I mean by that. This is the current in gray. This is the current driveway. You'll see that it clips the corner of this parcel. That is a very large, it's over 300-acre parcel owned by the state. Okay? And then it also, the driveway, if you noticed on that rectangular parcel that they also own, goes straight on through the middle of it. Meaning it would be really hard to build a house on that parcel, which is a buildable parcel, but right now cannot happen. So part of this request with the subdivision and with your modification in front of you is to utilize the first part of the existing driveway to do a relocation in the middle, which then pulls that driveway off of the state lands, and it makes that other parcel actually have an area that could potentially have a house on it. And then to join back up with the existing driveway, utilizing the rest of it to then access, again, the existing residence plus 2 houses that they're looking to subdivide that property. So it's a little bit interesting of a request, but what we see as we reviewed it, so I said this did go to some technical agencies for the feedback on that. So first of all, in the letter that came from Mr. Staley, you have a copy of that letter with the request, why it's being requested. He does state that this would minimize environmental impacts by reducing the limits of disturbance with the areas they actually have to disturb to then make this 10-foot wide all the way and do the relocation, and the total impervious area being constructed. And as you'll recall, we have environmental features on that northern triangular parcel, as well as that southern adjoining parcel is trees, 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 as far as we could see. So the reasoning that was given was to reduce those environmental impacts and the total impervious area with the construction. Now, in the reviews by the agencies that saw this, the Office of Public Safety stated that they have no issues with this modification. The Bureau of Resource Management also stated they have no issues, and they did support the lessening the impacts on the environmentally sensitive areas and a reduction of impervious surfaces that are being created. Engineering review also reviewed this. They find the width reduction to be inconsequential. However, the use in common driveway standards, the additional standards that go along with that, will still need to be met. So we would still review that through the plan processing. So that's the basis of the request. Staff and developer are requesting a determination from the commission today regarding that request. Again, it's a reduction from the required 12-foot wide use in common standards down to a 10-foot wide use in common driveway, which in part is the existing private driveway there. So let me know if you have any questions. I will tell you it took a while for me to wrap my head around this, but I think we've got it, and I think that hopefully you've got it at this point. But if you have questions as to what they're doing, why they're doing, please ask myself or Dan.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why not just go straight across? Because then you'd have access to that other piece of property.
Can I answer that?
Full access.
Yes, please.
Okay, the project started out with that southern parcel, originally was owned by Carroll County. They put it up for auction as excess land. J.A. Myers out of Hanover, which are home builders, bought that lot at a public auction. On that southern parcel, there is, of course, this private driveway, and Kelly Cumberland had had a temporary right-of-way over the driveway. In that deed, he could, that easement could be extinguished with a 90-day notice to Kelly Cumberland. So when Myers bought it, of course, he bought it with the intent to build on it. So because of the way the driveway was situated in there, he sent a letter off to Kelly Cumberland saying, hey, we're going to develop the lot and build a house on it, well, septic, and we need you to vacate the driveway. So that's when he came to us. Lot 1 that he built on was, of course, done some decades ago. The other long parcel in there, which was parcel A, was really identified as right-of-way for the relocation of Maryland 97 back decades ago. That, of course, has been abandoned by the state. So when that happened, of course, that parcel became available for sale, and Kelly Cumberland bought it. So when he came to us, he, of course, owned Lot 1 plus parcel A. So we looked at it and said, yes, it looked like there was potential for subdivision. It was zone conservation. We could do our 3 lots. We had enough to make 3 lots. So we laid them out, perked them. When we got to that point, the first thought was to build a driveway at the location you're suggesting. And that goes down over a hill, over the stream, through wetlands, and back up on the 97. We met with the 2 ladies from MDE, the wetlands lady and the floodplain lady. And of course, they gave them an outline of what it would take to go through their process. And then, of course, we identified an approximate cost to do the engineering, the application for a waterway construction permit, and then the cost of building the actual driveway. When he got that, we said, what are our other options? So we went back to J.A. Myers and said, would you be willing to sell the lot that you bought from the county? So they made a deal, and Kelly Cumberland bought the lot from Myers so he could continue to use the driveway that is always used and avoid building another driveway across the wetlands and more environmental disruption and all that sort of stuff. So that's that's kind of how we started, or where we got to where we are now. The southern parcel, when we perked it for Myers, when we did that, or I guess when Cumberland got involved, when we did that, based on the perk test and where that was approved by the health department, we needed to relocate the driveway. So that's what you've seen here earlier on the other slide. Since that time, of course, getting the Van Aller 2 through all the processes, we are down now that we have all our county approvals except for Bureau of Water Resource Management, and we need a variance from them, and because because of what we're disturbing inside what they call their stream buffer. So if we could not relocate all, if you could go back to the other slide, maybe, Laura. What we're talking about now possibly is, yeah, right there. What we'd like to do, if we're successful here today, we'd like to use the driveway from 97 to that eastern property line of the southern parcel. Then there, we would turn and do a little relocation to get off the parcel, to the part of the driveway that crosses the state of Maryland. Now, through the review process, Jonathan Bowman came to us during the review and said, would you go back to the state and see if you couldn't get a permanent right-of-way across their property so you wouldn't have to relocate the driveway because of environmental impacts? We did that for about the better part of 2 years, and it was concluded that to go through that process was timely, expensive, and you may not get what you want. So after a bunch of documentation, Jonathan finally said, okay, I'm willing to let the driveway be where it is, we'll continue on. So then, because of changing county code, back in, I'm gonna say maybe 22, there's a new code in there that says if you have an existing driveway, you're trying to make a use in common and it's substandard, you can go to the director and get a modification. We did that, and we went to the director, he came back and told us, well, because you submitted prior to that code change, you gotta be processed under the original code, not the new code. So the avenue was to come to you folks. So that's where we are here today. So our hopes would be that we get the modification from the Planning Commission, and then I think, I'm speaking for my client here, but I think we're willing to go back to the state and see if we can't get that last little piece there and leave the driveway the way it exists right now, just leave it in the ground and not build any new driveway. Now, with that being said, of course, we won't know the answer to that until we try going back through the state again. If we're unsuccessful there, then at that eastern property line, we'll make another little dog leg in that driveway to get the driveway off the state property and back on all the property that Kelly Cumberland owns. So that's kind of the history of it.
Okay.
And following your determination, this will continue through the minor subdivision process, and you will not see it back as a full commission. The chair has the authority to approve minor subdivisions at the end of the day. So
Would the adjusted driveway, the new portion, would that be 12 feet wide?
Yes, where we would, if we weren't successful getting the right of way through the state of Maryland, that little bit of dog leg there, yeah, there's no reason that couldn't be 12 feet wide.
Is the state aware that the driveway cuts through that
Yes,
piece of
yes,
property?
they are. And we're not sure how that happened, because when the county granted the right of way, there was a plat and description that was not this location. So why there's a deviation between what was recorded for the right of way and where the driveway got built is unknown to me.
Did I miss fire and EMS is okay with 10
Yeah.
foot for 3 lots?
yes.
And no pull-off required or turnarounds or anything?
There's a turnaround at the end, that we should still do. There'd be a pullover, if we had to relocate that little bit across the state, that's probably where the pullover would go. If not, we'd put it someplace else along the driveway. And then my client, at the end of this process, before he sells the other two, well, probably after he sells the other 2 lots and before they've finished building there, he plans to resurface the driveway and, make it look like a new use in common driveway. And of course, what it will lack would be the width, according to the code.
I'm confused.
I'm exhausted. I think he needs to rehydrate.
Well, in my opinion, if fire and EMS are okay with it, which
Yeah.
are the ones I'd be the most
the big
That's
concerned
right.
about.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how long is this road, driveway?
Ooh, I'm not sure I can answer that.
It
If I
looks
had-
long.
Yeah.
Well, it's over 500 feet, because that's why we have a turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long drive. But again, if they've signed off on it,
Yeah, that's the big.
you kind of have to, I don't know, but that would be my concern with the whole thing, but, you know,
Yeah, and,
I
you know.
got nowhere to go.
I agree. We've seen these before too, and we all have the similar comments. I mean, here we have a code, here we are changing it. And, you know, it's just, for me, it's frustrating when I'm a stickler. Well, it's 12, it should be 12. I get the date, the length, this has been in the pipeline for 100 years, yada, 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 yada. But if fire and EMS are okay, I get that part too, and to me, that's the critical piece.
Okay. Do we need a motion? We do?
Please.
Okay.
I would make the motion that we approve this for a use in common driveway width reduction in accordance with chapter 155, 025.
I'll second that.
Voice vote?
Yes, please. Mr. Huff?
Yes.
Mr. Kane?
Yes.
Mr. Lester?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Swason?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Abstain?
Madam Chair, let the record reflect, we have 5 yeas and 1 abstain.
Okay. And once again, I missed public comment, but I don't believe we have anybody that's public here, so we are good. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. What I will offer up is if we go back to the state, if we are successful getting that part of it, that we don't have to relocate anything, I'll have Laura have a report back to you, just so you know what the end result is.
Okay, thank
Thank you
you.
very much. My client thanks you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay. Number 12, Master Plan Assessment Phase Wrap. Secretary Daly.
It's fine. All right. I wanted to give you just a little bit of a recap of where we are with our master plan update process. This seemed like a good time to do it because we are basically at the, we've concluded the first phase of our work, which is, we call the assessment phase. It's getting a read on where we are right now, what our basis for looking at the master plan recommendations is. And we're now starting into that next phase, the direction setting phase. So I'm just going to give you a brief presentation to kind of recap where we've been. I'm in the process of putting that all together in a more formal report. In particular, I want to try to highlight some of the discussions that we've had that have really pulled forward key areas where you think the master plan needs to have some definitive recommendations and actions. And I'll provide that to you in the near future. But before we got too much further away from the conclusion of this phase, I wanted to just give you a quick refresher recap. Of course, most of the presentations that I'm going to reference are in your binder, so feel free to go back and look at those at any point. So just really quickly reviewing our assessment phase, we're already into this almost a year. We started last year by identifying the big ideas with a couple of work sessions with the Board of County Commissioners, with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then a joint work session. Those big ideas were refined into what we're calling the driving ideas, the main things that everybody felt the master plan needed to really focus on. We tested those driving ideas in an open community survey, and 1 or 2 new ideas emerged out of that. And then we spent most of the rest of the past year gathering and presenting data on who we are, where we've been, and where we might be headed. We shared these in open houses and got reaction and feedback from people that were there at the open houses, as well as provided an online opportunity to gather that feedback. And we're also, as I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, connecting with youth to get their take as well. And finally, as part of that gathering of data, we were looking at some trends that could affect how we want to move forward into the future. So I'm just going to recap a little bit of those movements there. As I mentioned, our consultations included 2 initial consultations with the Board of County Commissioners, an initial consultation with this commission over the summer last year, and then in September we had a joint work session between the Board of County Commissioners and the Planning and Zoning Commission to confirm the general issues of concern. And then since then, we've been holding generally twice monthly work sessions with you all. I try to build in something master plan related to at least every meeting that we have. Just to recap, the driving ideas are 5 of them. This is not the only topics that the master plan will cover, but they're kind of forming the nucleus of what we want to look at. And that includes housing options for households of all kinds, an economy that supports the community, a commitment to rural Carroll County, infrastructure that meets the needs of tomorrow, and working together to plan the future. You all have covered a lot of ground, particularly in the last 9 to 10 months. I've listed here some of the presentations that you've heard, and that's including, some kind of administrative sort of things like approval of the work plan, the resolution to form the work groups, that sort of stuff. But more importantly, a series of presentations and discussions on our topics and trends briefs, which have covered demographics, how we use our land, our infrastructure, the economy, housing, interjurisdictional coordination, as well as plan implementation, what's happened since the last plan was adopted. You had 2 different presentations that covered our 2 parts of the data handbook. We heard about the agricultural land preservation program. You received a presentation on our Rural Villages study, and we also did some introductory discussion on water and sewer capacity challenges and our buildable land inventory. We heard from the consultant who did the housing study, and we had a great discussion with him on those findings. You've heard from a number of our municipalities, some of which we still have to reschedule because we had some folks who couldn't attend, or we weren't able to get scheduled. We're continuing to work on getting those on the books. And then most recently, we had a presentation on growth tiers. So as I said, I'm going to try to continue to cull all of the discussions that we've had and put those into a report that will give us a good summary of the discussions that we had and what some of the major decision points were that you all gleaned from those presentations. I'm not going to cover this one in much detail, but I did just want to mention that in addition to all the presentations that you've heard, we were laying a lot of groundwork even before last summer. So the economic development and land use study was conducted, and we're using that in our work groups to generate some discussion there. I mentioned the housing study, the Rural Villages report, and then we also have the Transportation Master Plan that was concluded in 2023, and that's going to feed into our master plan update as well. So a lot of work was already underway or recently completed. Just to mention that we are continuing to work on ways to communicate internally so that as the master plan develops, it's not a surprise to anybody who's working within the county. So we have monthly meetings with staff from the Department of Planning and Land Management. We also have quarterly meetings from staff with other county departments and agencies just to keep everybody in the loop. We haven't had one of those in the last couple of months, but now that we've concluded the assessment phase, I'll be looking at getting those folks back together, just so we're making sure that we don't have any major conflicts arising throughout the process that we want to make sure we kind of flag for discussion. I shared with you an assessment phase feedback summary just recently. That was a pretty lengthy discussion, so I don't want to go back over that in a whole lot of detail. I just want to highlight that we've been really making an effort to reach out to the public, to engage them through lots of different ways, whatever people are comfortable with, whether that's an online survey, an open house, in-person participation in something like our Citizens Planning Academy, or even just following along on social media. We're really trying to hit as many bases as we can. Of course, we can always find new ways to connect with people, and we're constantly looking for those. As I mentioned, we're trying to ramp up our youth engagement. We've been with the Boys and Girls Club in Westminster. We're going to meet with Student Government Association soon, and we'll continue to look for ways that we can get feedback from our young people. So what comes next? As I mentioned, we're moving into what I'll call the direction setting phase. So that's where we're starting to get some very specific recommendations bubbling up to the surface. Our work groups have gotten underway. They've all had at least one meeting, and those were designed to do some deep dives into housing, economic development, and agriculture, so that they can share their recommendations with you and give you something to chew on in terms of where you want to go with the master plan recommendations. I'm looking at scheduling a joint work session with another joint work session with the Board of County Commissioners, probably towards the end of the work group's work, so that we can all hear what their recommendations are and see which ones seem like the best opportunities to pursue. Of course, we'll schedule some additional public outreach and engagement at that point as well, so because we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to sort of weigh in on some of the ideas that are coming forward. And then we really move into some of the nitty-gritty of putting that plan together. What are those recommendations? What are the decision points that we need to debate and put out there for feedback, that sort of stuff. So we're really ramping up and getting into sort of the meat of this plan update. So that's where we are right now. Any questions you have or anything that you feel I've missed and we want to make sure gets in the discussion?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We're good. Thank you. And once again, any public comment? Okay. All right. Moving on to number 13. Lucky 13. Master plan presentation on moderately priced dwelling unit programs.
Thank you. We're here today to talk to you about a program referred to as moderately priced dwelling units, MPDUs, and this will feed into the housing recommendations for the master plan, but at this point today, it's just an informational briefing. What I'll go over is what MPDUs are, how they're used, how they work, how they've been used in other jurisdictions in the past, and then some of the benefits and challenges to them. So just from the top, MPDUs are affordably priced homes of various types offered to home buyers and renters who have a moderate level of household income. So it's not considered low-income housing. It's sometimes referred to as workforce housing. It's meant for teachers, public safety workers, that type of thing. The program requires that a percentage of housing in new residential developments be made available to defined moderate income households, often in exchange for an increase in density. So how does it work? MPDU programs market units to home buyers and in some cases renters in some counties with incomes up to a certain defined percentage of the area's median income. Priority in the sale of MPDUs is often given to people who already live and work in the county. To maintain affordability and further the goal, the jurisdiction does impose certain resale and occupancy restrictions on MPDUs during the control period, and I'll explain that in more detail. So this program is not a state program. It's established by local ordinance. It specifies, the local ordinance would specify applicable zoning districts and minimum development property size for eligibility. It establishes the applicable zoning bonus densities, if there are any, and it sets the site plan requirements for the development. So it also sets eligibility standards and program requirements for its administration. Who regulates it? The county is entirely responsible for all aspects of administration of this program. It must be regulated, managed, and monitored by county staff. This includes qualifying eligible applicants, tracking and enforcing sales and resales, and updating requirements as the market demands. So it is an entire program. It's not just something that's imposed on new development. It's a program that continues usually over a control period of 30 years. So since the 1970s, there have been a number of MPDU programs in the country. In our area, Montgomery County was one of the initial and considered most successful administrators of this program. But currently, there are 3 jurisdictions that I'll review, Montgomery, Frederick, and Howard, that currently have this program in place. So in a comparison of counties, I won't go into the details, and I believe you did receive this PowerPoint, but comparing them where the developments are applicable. In general, Montgomery uses anything 20 units or above as requiring an MPDU. Frederick, it's 25 units. Howard appears to have no minimum threshold, but they must have a waiver because if it's just a few units, they couldn't possibly be requiring it. But there's nothing in their code that says that. And in Montgomery, if you have fewer than 20, then you still do have to pay into a fund. The percentage of MPDUs required, again, is fairly consistent, 12.5% to 15% based on the area. And what that means is of your entire units that you're allowed, if you're allowed 100 units because of your zoning, I would assume they round up, but 12.5 of those have to be moderately priced dwelling units. Regarding income thresholds, Montgomery uses up to 70% of the AMI. Howard uses up to 80%, and Frederick similarly uses 70 to 90%. So density bonuses have been discussed in all these programs over the years and have changed actually a lot. In Montgomery County, they do not give you a density bonus for the first 12.5 required percent. But then they have a tiered system that goes up to 35% for if you provide 25% of them being MPDUs. Now, I will say that in the literature I've read, if you're not going to provide a density bonus, then the cost will be passed along to the market rate units because the developer isn't going to eat the cost. So that is one downside of not giving a density bonus. Howard doesn't currently have a density bonus, but they are considered They're under consideration in a work group that they have going on right now. And in Frederick, it's a minimum 1-to-1 density bonus, up to 2.1 in their growth areas. And they do specify that extra units have to be the same type of units as the MPDUs. And this is kind of a tenet of all the programs, that the point of them isn't to have a separate low or moderate income section of it. They want them to blend into the entire community. And in fact, the way it's worded, they're not supposed to be distinguishable from the market rate units. Fees in lieu have been a problem with some of the programs. So in Montgomery County, they must be accepted and land transfers are considered. Howard County, they have various alternative compliance measures. And in Frederick, it's a permitted, across the board, $2 per square foot, but they don't get a density bonus if they choose the fee in lieu. So those are some of the aspects of the program. And so you can see they're not terribly different in how they're doing it, but they have been a bit different in the success of the program. So in Montgomery County, this was one of the nation's first, established in 1974. DHCA implements it. Currently, there's approximately 400 households on the waiting list who've been certified and need to be selected in a random drawing. And in all these programs, there's always more applicants than there are houses, so generally they use this certification and then lottery system. They are one of the counties that gives preference to if you live or work in the county currently. The construction of the MPDUs, it's stated, have to coincide with the market rate. Again, so they blend together, so they're part of the same community. And they have a 30-year control period for sales, 99 for rentals. So from 1976 to several years ago, which was their most recent data, there were 17,000 total MPDUs produced. The average annual production there is 354. And there's now approximately 5,000 MPDUs under control, which means they have the 30-year control period, and there's a whole system for if you sell your unit and it has to be sold to another moderate income person, which, again, that's an administration that the county has to absorb. The prices are adjusted annually, and the cost of MPDUs for sale is determined by a formula that considers a household's income and the unit size with rents capped at maximum percentage. I will tell you, in reviewing their code, and they've gone through many changes over the years, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
They've built in, I think in reaction probably to some of the problems, they've built in more and more factors in it and restrictions, and it's difficult to understand, it really is. In Frederick County, this was established in 2002, and they've had 13 amendments to their law since. So the site plan must show how MPDUs are integrated and dispersed. That's a central idea that they have. A reduction in area and dimensional requirements is granted to accommodate the MPDUs. The control period is 40 years. Again, that means that unit has to remain a moderately priced unit for 40 years, regardless of if it's sold over the course of that. Unfortunately, in Frederick County, very few units were built until a fee option was allowed in 2011. And there's a number of reasons for that. When they first adopted it, they grandfathered all, obviously, the existing site plans that had been approved. And then the Great Recession stopped a lot of it. So in 2011, they allowed a fee in lieu option. Of the 26 developments subject to the MPDU law since then, all have chosen the fee in lieu option, and there are currently no available MPDUs in Frederick. So if you were to consider this, that would not be your model if that's what you're trying to achieve. Some of the criticism about that, and there have been a few proposed, their councilmen have proposed a few changes, is that the fee in lieu goes into a general housing fund, which doesn't necessarily support the goal of moderate income housing. Sometimes it's lower income housing. So that's one thing to keep in mind about a fee. All the developers have chosen the fee, the $2 per square foot, because it's just easier than building and marketing the MPDUs. So that would definitely be something to consider.
So can we stay here for a second? I want to make sure I understand the fee thing. So I pay $2 a square foot, or $2 per, what am I paying?
$2 per square foot.
$2 a square foot. And where does that money go?
It goes into the county's, I'm not sure the exact name of it, but it's their housing fund. And one of the criticisms, because of the general goal for housing, but one of the criticisms that sparked a proposed amendment last year that didn't go through was that it went to, in addition to the homeless shelter. Again, a housing goal, a housing need.
Right.
But not to the goal of providing
Providing housing.
workforce or moderately priced housing.
All right, so if the developers are choosing to pay the fee rather than develop the MPDUs, I'm not sure I understand, and they're getting higher density?
No, they do not get
They
any.
don't get
Once
higher
If
density.
they pay the fee, they get no higher
They did
density.
good, okay, thank you.
No, they
There you
just
go,
choose
thank
to
you.
pay the
I
fee
saw-
because it's easy.
You did say that, and okay, I'm with you, I'm tracking. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So the third program I looked at was, they don't call it MPDU, it's the Moderate Income Housing Unit Program. That was established in Howard County in 1992. They're currently considering changes to their program for a number of reasons. So in Howard County, the MIHU units must be of design and construction that are architecturally compatible with market rate units, have base square footage by type, and be interspersed throughout the development, again, as they require in Frederick County. They must be in the same ratio for the entire development and distributed throughout the development. But again, they are allowed to propose alternatives if economically infeasible. And a lot of times economically infeasible would be because it's such a small development, or if they're building multi-million-dollar homes, as they tend to do sometimes in Howard County, it would be difficult to have an MPDU component. So that's why most of these programs do allow the alternative, but again, in Frederick County, everybody's taking advantage of the alternative. So Howard's program, like Montgomery's, is a little bit, the administration of it is a little complicated. Priority points are given for first-time homebuyers, residents, and workers in the county. And you get a certain amount of points for how many years you've been on the waiting list. Their control period for resales is 30 years if it was purchased on or after 2005, but 10 or 15 if it's before 2005. Again, it's a complicated formula that they run there. In 2023, their home ownership program settled a total of 36 sales, including 23 new construction properties and 13 resales. So that's the volume that they're currently dealing with. And the price range, again, is reviewed biannually. Prices based, the prices vary based on income. They have a formula for that. So that's kind of how other jurisdictions in our area are doing this. What are the advantages of an MPDU program? These types of programs do make housing more readily available to county residents and workers who may not otherwise be able to purchase housing that is affordable to them. That's the obvious. They also do help distribute housing for moderate income households throughout new residential developments. That's also the goal. A few of the challenges is there is a cost to the county to administer this type of program, depending on the scope of it, of course. Communities may object to the increase in density as well as the differences in housing type. You've seen that. The cost of the MPDU may be passed on to market rate buyers, particularly if you're not providing a density bonus. And in Carroll, there's very limited development, so the number of MPDUs may be few. Several observations just to conclude before you have any questions. If you're going to look into this program, it should be tailored to your jurisdiction and all the different aspects of development in your jurisdiction. Changes to the program are needed periodically as conditions evolve. What I saw was the more complex the program, the more difficult and expensive it is to administer. So, as with most things, simple might be best. And allowing alternative compliance results in significantly fewer units for moderate income residents. So that would be another aspect to look at if you were making a recommendation on this. The other problem right now, and we have the master plan where you're reassessing this, is Carroll, not including the municipalities, has had only 4 residential developments of at least 20 units, which, as you'll recall, was the threshold for those counties, roughly, approved since 2015, and 3 of those were for senior housing. So right now, the development we're seeing, it would have limited applicability. Again, as you go forward and look at the master plan and opportunities for more housing and larger developments, it may be appropriate for that. I know that was kind of a lot. Do you have any questions?
Do we have an office that's even comparable to whoever's administering this, you know, the different names that they use? Do we even have something like that in the county? Who would say, oh, yeah, I can oversee this program for you? Do we have something like that in existence?
Well, you have your Department of Citizen Services, which administers housing programs. I did try to figure out the number of staff and the cost of administering these, and I didn't have conversations with anyone, but just looking at their departmental structures, their org charts, things like that, they're all wrapped into their housing departments, so they don't have like an office of MPDU.
Okay.
But certainly, as we get farther down the road, if this is something that you and the commissioners are interested in.
So
we
on
can
your
look into
back of
that.
napkin calculation, what'd you come up with? What was the cost?
I didn't come up with that.
I'm sorry?
I didn't come up with a
Oh,
cost to it, no.
I thought you said you
No,
looked
I
at it.
tried to look and
Oh,
see
oh.
if I could find something comparable.
okay.
It would
What
have a
did you-
lot of factors, too. It would
Yeah.
really be how, again, if you were going to do this, I would recommend as simple as possible. Some of the formulas that I saw, and it would just be a lot for.
It's not, if you, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Have the municipalities been, has this been introduced to the municipalities?
In our
Concept?
county?
Yeah.
I don't believe any of our counties do, or, I'm sorry, our towns do use this. I'm sure, I believe in Montgomery County, I think maybe Gaithersburg uses it. I didn't look into any of the towns, I was just thinking they were smaller scale. But if you're interested in this, we could certainly do more research on it.
You know, as we sit here, I mean, obviously Westminster, Mount Airy.
Right.
Is there an opportunity for Sykesville and the Warfield project to incorporate something like this in there? I have no idea.
I mean, it's certainly a policy decision that any of their county councils could make, assuming they had. Again, it really is only appropriate for anything 20 units and over.
Yeah.
And that does limit it somewhat.
Well, that's why I asked, because that's where that might be in the municipalities.
They may have, I mean, this is just one tool. There's a lot of housing programs available, so, I mean, we could look into if our towns are using any other types of programs
Incentive
such as this that
program.
aren't quite this program.
Right.
There's different ways to look at it.
We also have, just speaking of Warfield, the legislation that was passed last year related to qualified projects.
Yep.
And that has sort of similar thresholds, like a certain percentage of units that have to be affordable. So there could also be surrogate types of programs out there that are achieving some of the same goals that might be applicable to both the county and the towns.
And I know just like with stuff, you know, that we do, especially in the city, which is all big, huge apartment buildings, a lot of those times, those developers actually work out like tax break deals with the city for a certain percentage to be low income, moderate, you know, actually just mixed incomes in the buildings. And for that, you know, oh, for 10 years, you don't have to pay taxes or whatever it is.
So I'm curious, mention that, you know, about the retirement villages, but is it possible to have affordability in there for not necessarily older residents, but others does it just have to be totally a retirement village? Can there be?
Well, for the retirement village, no, you couldn't mix younger people in. You could change the code, but the way the code's written, it does have to be everybody over 55. And that's why you get more density. You already get more density for doing a retirement village than you would if you just did a piece of property developed, say, in the R20. So, does that answer your?
Yeah,
Are you saying?
it does.
Yeah,
I
but
mean-
you could do an MPDU program and include over 55 units. It might not achieve the same goal if you're looking for the whole workforce housing aspect of it and having a place for your
Teachers, fire,
teachers,
yeah.
right?
EMTs.
But you could do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Eldersburg area has the larger parcels of ground that would probably be ideal for something like this.
Well, with our lack of tiers legislation, the growth area would be the only place that you could do 20 or more units on a single property. You don't see those out on ag because you're limited to 7 per parcel.
Yeah.
So, and that'd be difficult for an MPDU to build, 6 market rate and then 1 MPDU, especially if you want to incorporate different types of units, smaller units or townhouses.
Yeah.
It'd be tricky.
Yeah, and when we talk about freedom, I mean, you've got the Gibson property, Beatty, Wolf, Zabel. We're done. You know, I mean, you know better than I do. There may be something else, coming, but those are the main parcels, right? That are of any size.
Yep. Did the other counties, did they create new zoning districts for this?
For this program?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe they did. I mean, in the case of Montgomery County since 1974, they've probably gotten some new zoning districts, but it wasn't part of the package to create it. But if you were to consider this and it was to be in conjunction with the master plan, it could be part of that package. You could be looking at new land use designations as well as new zoning categories and kind of packaging it that way.
So you've spent time putting this together. There's stuff coming down from the state saying, hey, pay attention to this, that we've got a housing problem. As a commission, what are we think we want to be? I mean, how do we want to address this? Are you asking us to say, what would this look like if we were to adopt something? Or is this just for your information, stick this in the file? I mean, do we want to act on this? What do you think?
Why don't you just stick it in the file?
Okay.
Those things never come out of there. But I do think it's an important thing to consider as you're going through, particularly the housing work group. Both of us, or all 3 of us were there last night. They're working through the needs, the barriers. Last night they talked about barriers to housing. So these would all be tools that could be used to break through that. So I think it's something to be kept in mind as you move forward, again, with the master plan. But at this point, we're not looking for any action unless you want us to look further into it. Certainly, we could do that.
I think if we ever really thought about it, a trip to Montgomery County would probably be good to visually see what it looks like.
So since, I probably know the answer to this, given the state's economic situation right now, but, so there's no involvement from the state.
Not in this program, no.
But the state, on the other side, state's also a big proponent of affordable housing. Do you, and just your opinion, do you think the state would eventually step up to help fund or provide incentives for the counties to do these kind of programs?
I haven't seen that
appetite.
I haven't seen that momentum. The things that we've been seeing from the state recently are really focused more on trying to eliminate obstacles to things like accessory dwelling units. As I mentioned, the qualified projects that were part of the legislation last year, which kind of creates lots of different scenarios where you could have the opportunity to do affordable housing almost by right. Those kinds of things, they're trying to make it easier for home builders to create the product rather than legislating that certain types of programs are used.
And
So-
notably,
Probably a
they
good thing.
haven't jumped in to
That's a
help
good thing.
administer anything either. Like with the
Right.
qualified
Right.
projects, it was very clear when that law passed, we got the message, it's
Right.
up to you to administer this.
You're right, it's a dual-edged sword. It would be nice to have them support financially a little bit, you know, but we know what that
Good
comes
luck with
with,
that.
you know, here's how you gotta do it. So, you know,
So, I've been told that there's some kind of program that the state has for like wastewater upgrades and stuff for new developments, if the density reaches a certain criteria. And you-
We could look into
I'd
that.
be interested in that program.
Like grants.
Well, the comment came up like, you know, if you're only at a maximum density of 3 units per acre, if you went to 3.5 is like the threshold where the state kind of helps.
Well,
with
that would
wastewater.
qualify you as a priority funding area,
Right.
so maybe
Yeah.
that's what, so once you're a priority, once an area's a priority funding area, then they do qualify for state money, but I don't know about anything specific. It just means
So
you're
it's just
eligible.
priority
Right, it means you're eligible.
eligible,
Get
but
in
may
line.
not get it anyway.
you get in
with
line.
everybody else.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Any questions? No. And general public? No. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. And looks like we have meetings on June 4th and June 17th coming up, so.
We are still working on the agenda for June 4th. We may or may not have the meeting then, but we'll be sure to let you know as
Okay.
far as in advance as possible if we decide to cancel that meeting.
I don't think we'll cry.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.